Hi, I'm Lee Kelso, host of the Health Call Live Radio Hour. Glad you're here as we learn more about living organ donation. Now, I think we're all pretty well aware of organ donation after death, but there is a way that you can change a life while you're still alive. And I'm not sure a lot of people know about that, so let's learn more. We're going to be talking today with Kelly Perdue, the Chief Executive Officer, and Emily Buckley, the Chief Clinical Operations Director at the Living Bank. They're a group that coordinates living organ donation. So, ladies, I'm glad you're here to teach me more about this. Explain to me the main benefit of living organ donation.
Yes, thank you so much, Lee, for having us. So currently there's about 116,000 individuals waiting on transplants in the United States today. And living donation allows a friend, a family, acquaintance, a stranger to actually donate either a kidney or a liver to an individual and expedite that process, because the average wait time right now for a kidney transplant in the United States is about 3 to 5 years. So quite a long time for these individuals to be incurring these chronic illnesses, being on dialysis, or going to and from medical appointments. So living donation definitely expedites the process and allows the recipients to move forward with a little bit more of a normal life post-transplant.
Yeah, and does it affect the quality or the outcome for the recipient if the organ is harvested from a live donor versus a deceased donor?
Actually, it does not. It actually has better outcomes than deceased donors. So usually these matches are a little bit better of a match compared to deceased donors. And especially for kidneys, we are seeing that recipients are living a little bit longer with a living donor compared to a deceased donor.
So there is a process involved here that I am just fascinated by, and that is kind of the swap program. So let's say that I want to donate a kidney to my wife, but we don't match. Our tissues just are not a good match. How does the swap program come in?
Yes, the swap program is something that has come about within the last couple of years, and it's an amazing opportunity where if you're a healthy individual, you meet all of the criteria to be able to donate a kidney to an individual. However, you do not match the blood type. You can actually enter the swap program where you will be paired with another recipient and donor, and that recipient's donor will actually donate to your loved one, family, stranger, and vice versa. And what's neat is that they have actually extended the swap program into what's called a chain, where they can continue on this kind of domino type program up to as many individuals as needed. So the longest chain program that has occurred in the United States is about 35 kidneys have been swapped out to impact 35 individuals.
So, Kelly, does this mean that on any one day there are going to be all these procedures happening across the country as organs are harvested and transplanted and moved around the country?
Well, we generally refer to it as organs being recovered, I think, and that really stemmed more from respect for deceased organ donors. But in terms of living organ donors, the paired exchange that Emily was referring to went all the way across the United States, and so it does not happen in the same day, and it's just a chain of patients that goes down. And what's great, one thing I wanted to mention is that if you're an altruistic donor, that means I want to donate to Emily, or I want to donate my kidney, but I don't have an intended recipient. I can do that. They start with an altruistic donor because there's not an intended recipient for them.
Okay, let me get clear on that. So I don't have a target for where I want my organs to go. I just know that I want to donate an organ. So that is what starts this chain.
one of the services that the Living Bank does provide is we are independent living donor advocates. So we get called in to ensure that these donors aren't being coerced or forced. And pretty much we're talking to them about their reasoning for donating. And so some people really just feel called. They may not have an intended recipient, but they know of someone who received a life-saving transplant, and they feel called to be able to help and provide, life to somebody who otherwise would not have this opportunity.
Well, I admire them greatly, but I'm not sure I'm that guy. What organs can be donated? We've talked about kidneys, but it doesn't stop there, right?
Correct. So kidney is the most common organ that is donated currently in the United States. Livers are also able to be, a lobe of the liver can also be donated. And that is becoming a little bit more popular. And then also in addition to that, very rarely people can donate a portion of their pancreas and a lobe of their lung in addition to, or along with people donating kidneys or livers. So those do not happen nearly as often as kidney or livers, but those are opportunities and options.
Yeah, I think people might be surprised to learn, Kelly, that when you donate a portion of your liver, your body has an amazing ability to restore it to full function, both for you and the donor and the recipient.
Well, absolutely. So when you donate a liver lobe, it will regenerate anywhere from 90 to 95% in the recipient and in the donor. And what's also fascinating to me is if you donate, an adult donates to a pediatric patient, and it's a liver lobe, that liver, it grows with that pediatric patient. And the body is amazing. And to touch back on living donation, about 86% of living donor transplants are kidney, and anywhere from 11 to 13% living organ donation is a liver lobe. And so they make up 95% of those that are transplanted through living donation.
So let's talk about this from the donor perspective. What kind of downtime am I going to undergo? What's that procedure like? We'll focus first on kidneys. How long am I going to be laid up? What kind of process is that for me?
Yes, so I will speak on the kidney side. A nephrectomy usually takes about 2 to 3 hours under general anesthesia. And then most donors are in the hospital anywhere from 24 to 72 hours post-donation. And once they leave the hospital, we usually tell donors to expect to take about 2 to 4 weeks off from work, give or take. Normally during that time, we don't want you lifting anything heavy, just taking it easy. I mean, you just underwent a major abdominal surgery. Then we normally tell you that your recovery really just fluctuates from there. Some people feel great a couple months after the surgery. Some people state that it takes them about a year to feel like they fully recovered from the fatigue. But they state that providing life to somebody else was worth the additional fatigue that they have incurred. They will also continue to follow up routinely with the transplant center nephrologist to ensure that they are recovering well and that there are not any complications.
Okay, well, I'm a pretty serious health nerd, so my question then becomes: do you do the retrieval from the front or the back? If you're going through the back, that's a lot of muscle that you're cutting through. That could be a pretty extreme amount of physical therapy and things afterwards.
So they actually do it laparoscopically through the belly button, and so they do it through the front. So they try to do as the least invasive option possible.
And then do you have any idea what that recovery length is like for the liver donor?
So very similar to the kidney recovery. So liver donors are usually in the hospital a little bit longer, give or take, just because of the intensity of the surgery in regards to them taking a portion of your lobe. But normally they are discharged within 72 hours to a week after donation. And similar recovery process where we tell you that you're going to be taking usually about 4 to 6 weeks off, give or take, with donating your liver, and then very close follow-up afterward just to make sure that there are not any complications.
So 4 to 6 weeks off on both procedures, long recovery time, that's a big economic hit. What happens for the donor? Is there any support for them available?
So legally, the recipient cannot pay the donor for donating their organ to them. However, they can assist with, if they have to travel, they can assist with travel expenses or housing expenses here in the Houston area or the area where they are wanting to donate. There are assistance programs out there for living donors if they qualify. The other thing that we always tell living donors to look into is if you are working and you have to take time off, you should be eligible, if you have it, for short-term disability through your employer. But that is something that we discuss with donors in regards to not only how is this going to impact you physically, emotionally, but also we talk to them about how is this going to impact you financially? And if it is going to impact you financially, are there any type of resources or funds that we can access to help you through this transition?
And can I have the donation procedure in my hometown, or do I have to travel to the transplant center where the surgery will occur?
So you have to travel to the transplant center where the surgery will actually occur, just to make it as seamless as possible. The organs can usually only be out of the body for a certain amount of time, so they just want to make sure that you are on site and that the organ is ready to go into the recipient.
Well, that makes sense. Sure. Kelly, how do I register? How do I get engaged if I want to be a donor?
Well, first, if you're interested in altruistic donation, and there are a lot of young people that want to make an impact and as Emily mentioned, want to give something back, and what a greater gift than giving someone the gift of life. So if I'm an altruistic donor, the suggestion is contact the transplant center in your area that has a live donor program. And when you call, they will do an assessment and a pre-screen to determine if you meet the initial qualifications. And then they will connect you with an independent living donor advocate. Now, if you are someone, if I want to donate to my mother, I would get in touch with her transplant center where she's listed. And sometimes people are listed at more than one center, and you'll go through the evaluation process. And one thing to mention, what's so important about living organ donation and where the Living Bank has come alongside is that back in 2007, they put in federal regulations that you had to have an independent living donor advocate. And that person is to ensure that your decision is free from coercion and 100% voluntary. In most centers in the United States, they have someone within their medical system that provides that independent living donor advocate. But the advocate has to be the first person to make contact with that patient once they go through initial call screening, because that patient needs to know this person is completely independent from the transplant center. They are there for the living donor candidate and then the living donor post-donation, and that there's no conflict of interest there. And that's where the Living Bank came alongside with the centers. We happen to be located in the Texas Medical Center and have the opportunity to work with 4 world-class transplant centers. And then we also work with centers outside of Texas via telehealth. But that independent living donor advocate, whether it's within the health system or not, that living donor needs to know that's the person that they can go to. And one other item I wanted to mention, and you may be asking this is that what if I'm a donor or I'm a candidate and I change my mind? There's something that's called a medical alibi. And the transplant center can give that prospective donor an alibi so that the person they were intending to donate to, they wouldn't know why. Because the living donor candidate must have no reservation, because there are socioeconomic issues, support issues, all of that. And there's people really need to educate themselves. Being a living donor is the greatest gift, but they need to know what comes along with that. And one other example is, what if the kidney that you donate is rejected? I mean, what is the emotional piece of that after donation? And these are things that you must take into account when you're counseling the living donor.
That is a great point. There is a psychological component to all of this, certainly. And what type of, do you provide assistance along those lines? Or if I want to, after the fact, where am I going to get the help from somebody who understands kind of what I'm going through?
Yes, that is a great question. So during your evaluation to donate, because you will have to be evaluated, and that's a pretty thorough evaluation, you will actually meet not only with an independent living donor advocate, but you will also meet with a social worker who will help talk you through all of those concerns, those points. We kind of talk to you about, we prepare you for the worst, hope for the best, right? And they will also be available to you post-transplant, along with your independent living donor advocate. We are here to support the donor because we know that they are also recovering, they not only physically, but also emotionally. And so we work very closely with community providers to provide, to refer them to the community to receive any type of counseling or support that they need during that time.
I just am fascinated by the thought of people being so well-intended that they would offer part of their body to a stranger and just can't think so highly of them. It's really kind of remarkable that we come to that place. Ladies, I think it's time for us to wrap this up. Is there any last points you'd like to make?
That it is a life-saving gift, which we said. And one thing that I would like to mention is to hear living donors talk about their recipient after surgery. The living donor doesn't feel great because they just went through surgery, but they walk into the recipient's room, they see the yellow come from the eyes, they see the clarity. Every time I talk about it, I get goosebumps. This one young man, our board chair, donated a kidney to a family friend. And within hours of the surgery, the protein that had built up in his joints had started to dissipate. So it's just unbelievable, the gift of life that they give them. They're not tied to dialysis if it's a kidney transplant. And so that's the piece. Although it doesn't benefit the living donor by taking their organ, the ripple effect of those affected by a life-saving procedure is, words can't express that. So to share that is a wonderful thing and a miracle. The body is miraculous.
I agree with you on that. Again, thank you so much. That is
Thank
Kelly
you.
Perdue, the Chief Executive Officer, and Emily Buckley, the Clinical Operations Officer at the Living Bank. And you can find them online at livingbank.org. Again, that's livingbank.org. Ladies, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Lee.